You're watching BNN Bloomberg. I'm John Ehrlichman. The jobs reports on both sides of the border today, a reminder of how challenging a period this is for so many people who are out of work, struggling to pay their bills. In some cases, we have seen those people going online for help. Platforms like GoFundMe, for example, have seen an increase in the number of campaigns. Let's get some more perspective on how the platform has been used during COVID-19. Tim Cadogan is the CEO of GoFundMe and joins us now. Tim, thanks very much for being with us. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with you, John.
Let's just talk a little bit about the platform and how it's being used these days. I've heard of all sorts of stories, even, people I know who are dealing with health issues and hospital bills. And, it's amazing how quickly these campaigns gain traction. But generally speaking, how would you say the platform's been used during COVID-19?
Yeah, John, it really started in early to mid-March with campaigns primarily for frontline medical workers and PPE. But then as you saw shelter-in-place orders take effect, you started to see a lot more campaigns for employee relief and for small businesses. And then over the last few weeks, it's moved into food security, rent relief, and mental health. So we've seen an incredible diversity of campaigns, really for every aspect of response to the crisis.
Now, it's interesting to see that when we think about whether it's the U.S., Canada, anywhere else in the world, that the governments are taking action to try to assist people who are in need. I mean, with any of those campaigns, is there a common thread, even if we're thinking about people who lose their jobs or small businesses that are affected? Why are they reaching out online, do you think, as opposed to maybe, asking for more aid, say, from their government?
Well, I think the key to it, there's two things, I think. GoFundMe is, of course, only a part of the solution. There are, as you mentioned, government programs. What GoFundMe allows you to do is to appeal directly to your friends and your family, or in the case of a small business, your patron and your community, and to get help from those that know you, care about you, love you, support you. And it supplements the programs that come from governments and other large institutions. The other thing it allows you to do is to have an emotional connection, which obviously is a bit less of the case with government programs. It allows people to set up campaigns for folks that they know are affected, whether it be a small business or friends who are victims of the disease. So there's an emotional component that is complementary to the institutional component of the governments.
That's helpful context. And you talked about some of the different campaigns being launched, but just can you give us a general sense as just sort of the number of campaigns that we're seeing mounted these days? The numbers when we talk about the job losses, both in Canada and the United States, are just absolutely enormous today. So.
Yeah, I mean, the volume of campaigns and of donations is unprecedented worldwide. To give you an idea, in March, we saw about $120 million donated, and the variety is completely comprehensive across the whole economy. Enormous range, enormous diversity, and unprecedented. And the way we like to think about this is it's an unprecedented level of generosity as well. If you think that, unlike any other crisis, every single person who is giving is also affected by this. And we've never seen that before, and we've never seen such an unprecedented level of generosity of people coming together to help each other through this crisis. So unparalleled in our experience and probably in most of our lifetimes.
That is one of the bright spots at a difficult time. There's no doubt about that. The other thing, Tim, that we've been talking so much about is whether these shifts we are dealing with right now are temporary or permanent. And I'm talking more on the technology side of it. I mean, look, I'm interviewing you from my home, and we just did a segment on, how, people are using delivery services to get their food more frequently. And e-commerce is continuing to rise. Has this pandemic change the way that a platform like GoFundMe, do you think, will be used going forward?
It's a great question. I think small businesses, for example, are using us more than they were previously. But we have yet to see how this will play out. So I think we're still in what we would call the urgent need phase. We are beginning maybe to see the steps towards recovery as some states and some cities around the world, some countries open up, but it's still very early. So, urgent need is the main use case. Recovery and how platforms like ours will be used in the recovery phase is a little early to tell, but we have seen this very, very large level of activity, so it may flow over into that recovery period.
And I guess, a lot of times we do think of it being used on more of a personal level. To your point, you're worried about your friend, you're worried about a family member, and you just get online and you start the campaign. And sometimes you see that outpouring of support for people very quickly. But even for businesses that are trying to get the word out, I mean, is that something that a platform like yours ends up being used for more in the future, just to kind of get the word out, raise awareness around other things that people are trying to do?
I think it's definitely possible. I mean, take an example, People's Co-op Bookstore in Vancouver, which is a beloved institution. I think it's the oldest bookstore in Canada, recently put together a campaign, and it's a great way for the community that love that bookstore to come together and support it. And I think it's fair to say there could well be use of that going forward. As a way to supplement the revenue that businesses like that get from regular business. So it's definitely possible. We have seen some of that in the past. So we think we may see more in the future. And that's a good example of that kind of thing going on.
Just a final question. I mean, you mentioned there's so many global campaigns. Would you say there is a common thread, whether it's someone that's raising awareness or starting a campaign in Canada, the US, Australia, wherever it might be around the world?
Yeah, I mean, the thread is, how can I, as a campaign organizer, take action to help? And as you said, the bright spot here is you have many hundreds of thousands of people saying, I'm stuck at home. There's not much I can do. But I can actually take action. I can put together a campaign. I can mobilize my friends, my family, my network, and I can bring people together to take an action that helps someone else while we're all stuck here at home. And we know from many psychological studies that one of the best things you can do for well-being is to give. And at this point, when we can't give in terms of our time, we can't go and help at a food kitchen, we can give with our resources. So it gives people a very powerful avenue to do something and to take action, in a sense, to fight back against this crisis and this pandemic and help others. So I think that's the central theme. And I just had a very large wasp fly in front of my screen. So excuse me. That doesn't happen all the time.
You're very smooth through it. Yeah, you're very smooth. You should anchor a TV show, Tim. No, that's really true. It is really true. There has been that desire for people to give and to see that. Tim, thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time.